With the release of iPadOS, it's more practical than ever to make the iPad your primary machine. In this video, I'm going to show you the 8 critical pieces of gear I've been using to make iPad-only working a reality over the last year. Let's go. Welcome everybody to TechCraft. This is Rob, and today's video is the first in a 2-part series on using the iPad Pro as your primary machine. In this first video, I'm going to go through all of the hardware and gear that you need to make that a reality, and in the second part, I will go into all of the software I use to get my work done. Now, I've been using the iPad for the last 12 months pretty much as my primary machine. My workload is all the typical stuff you would imagine, so document creation, calendaring, email, video conferencing, that kind of stuff. But I'm also doing quite a bit of coding work on the iPad as well. I use the iPad as my primary machine when I go taking photographs in my hobby, and photo editing is superb on the iPad. The only thing I'm really struggling with to get the same experience as on the laptop is video editing, although that is getting better, so do keep tuning in to the channel to see how that develops. I switched to the iPad as a primary machine for 2 reasons: form factor and battery life. Now, I've been traveling for work for the last 15 years, so a small, lightweight setup has become a critical part of my setup, and the iPad has really hit the sweet spot there. Not only is the device itself quite small, but all of the gear that goes with it, the whole setup is really quite compact. Now, battery life is also fantastic. You can get pretty much a whole day's work out of a single charge without really worrying, and because you have instant on with your iPad, you can shut the device down and open it up at any point. It's always there and you're saving battery when you're doing that. So I'll put links to all of the kit in the description below. I'm not sponsored by any of the manufacturers that I'm going to mention, but I will use affiliate links from Amazon. They don't cost you any more, but the channel does get a small commission if you do use them. Let's dive straight in with the most important piece of kit in the whole setup, and that's the iPad itself. When choosing your iPad Pro, you have 3 main decisions to make. You have to choose how much storage you want, what screen size you want, and whether or not you want a cellular modem in the iPad. Now, I picked up the 3rd generation iPad pretty much as soon as it came out, and I went for the 11-inch version with 512 gigabytes of storage, and I went for 4G. Now, at the time, I was a little bit worried that 512 gig was going to be an overkill for me, and also that the 4G modem would just not get used. However, kind of regret now not getting the 1 terabyte version of the iPad. I am stressing the storage quite a lot with photography and video, and the 4G has been indispensable. It gets used every day. So I recommend when you're looking at buying an iPad, getting as much storage as you can afford and really being honest with yourself as to whether or not, if you're traveling on the road, you're going to get some value out of 4G. My setup retails for about £1,300 today. Whether or not you'll be able to pick that cheaper up in your country, I don't know, but definitely focus on getting the most storage you can for your money. The second piece of kit you need in your iPad Pro setup is a hardware keyboard. You can get by with the software keyboard if you don't use the iPad a lot, but if it's your daily machine and you're doing your actual work on it, then you really need to invest in an actual hardware keyboard. There are loads of hardware keyboards on the market, and you should pick one that fits your requirements. For me, I wanted something that was a good combination of lightweight, but also that offered a decent actual keyboard experience. So I've settled on this one, the Logitech Slim Folio. It's got a great set of keys. It's got all the kind of shortcut keys I like, so I can control music playback and volume. I can lock the iPad. I can do the spotlight search, and I can go straight back to the desktop. Those are really handy keys when you're doing a lot of work on the iPad. What I really love about this keyboard, though, is the way the lock works. So if you just pop the pad like that and close the lid of the case, that actually turns the case off. The keyboard is turned off. Now, if I open it up and snap it back into place, you can see the power light comes on and the case is back on. I have a Bridge iPad keyboard. It doesn't have the same feature, and sometimes I find that the keyboard drains in my bag, so this has proven to be a really useful feature. So the third piece of kit you need in your iPad Pro setup is an Apple Pencil. Now, I say need, and you should check whether you really need it for your particular workflow, but honestly, with the amount of note-taking that people do and drawings and diagramming in any real job, having an Apple Pencil on hand is really useful. So if you had the first generation Apple Pencil, you may be a bit wary about investing in the second generation. The first gen was a great idea, but the execution was pretty bad, if you ask me. It had two major flaws. The first was that you couldn't actually attach the pencil to the iPad in any way, and you had to buy kind of a third-party elastic connector, which was a bit weird. And then to charge it up, you had to pop the cap off and stick it into the side of the iPad, or use a weird lightning cable to do that. So it was a really unwieldy actual experience. Now, Pencil 2 has solved both of those problems. So let's see how. You can take the pencil and it connects to the iPad via a magnet like that. And whilst it's connected, it is charging. Really nice. Like this is so good. There's never a time during the day when the pencil isn't working. It's just such a natural device now. You may also have noticed if you used the first pencil that sometimes it was a little bit laggy. When Pencil 2 came out, they'd made huge improvements on the latency, and there was very rarely occasions where you spotted that latency. And now with iPad OS, the latency is further reduced, and I must say that in my workflow, I essentially don't notice any lag between drawing on the screen and what I'm drawing appearing on the screen. Navigation with the pencil is fantastic. You can move around the iPad with your pencil. You can tap on the icons for your apps to go into them. You can pretty much do everything with the pencil that you do with your finger. There are some great apps that have native pencil support. And when we think about things like note-taking and drawing, there are specialist apps designed exactly around the second generation pencil that works so well. In part 2, I'm going to dive into those apps in more detail, so make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that next important part in the iPad Pro series. The fourth piece of kit you need is a charger. Now, you can absolutely use the standard Apple charger. Out of the box, the iPad comes with a battery that is just over 10,000 milliamp hours, and it comes with an 18-watt USB-C charger and one of Apple's weird white USB-C cables that are a bit sticky. Now, 18 watts isn't actually that powerful for a device this size, and the power brick itself is quite chunky. So I replaced it with this, which is the Anker Atom PD1. Now, this is a fantastic device. It's 30 watts, so it charges up the iPad significantly faster than the in-box adapter, and it's just so small. This is the UK version. The US one is actually even smaller, and the European version is around about the same. So if you're going to replace the charger, you may as well replace the charging cable. Now, the standard cable has plastic sheathing, or like a rubber sheathing, which does fray pretty easily. I've replaced it with one of these, which is an Anker braided USB-C cable, and the braiding is just so much more robust if you're chucking the cable in and out of your bag all the time. This is a pretty cheap setup, really, and makes a huge difference if you're traveling around a lot with your iPad in your bag. Item number 5 on the list is a battery. No matter how good the battery life is in the iPad, no matter how small and compact your charger is, there will come a time when you need to charge the iPad from an external battery, and I've been using this one, which is the Anker 10,000 milliamp hour PD battery. And PD means that it is a USB-C battery, so it can charge the iPad directly, and it also delivers 18 watts, so it's just as powerful as the inbuilt charging pack you get with your iPad. Now, 10,000 milliamp hours is just shy of what the iPad battery life is, so you basically get a full charge from this battery. Really handy. This has gotten me out of so many jams where can't find a power socket, need to work. Just plug this in, and it's like having your iPad plugged into a wall socket. One of the big downsides of the iPad Pro is that it only has a single USB-C port for charging and for data. This is great for kind of casual usage, but if you're doing real work on the iPad, you're likely to need many more ports than that. So this brings me to item number 6 on the kit list, a USB-C hub or a USB-C dock. Now, if you already have a dock that you're using with your MacBook or similar laptop, chances are that will work. I have a Lenovo dock that I use with my MacBook, and it works just fine. However, I did want something a little bit lighter and something that was a bit more in keeping with the iPad form factor, so I picked up this, the Hyperdrive 6-in-1 USB-C dock designed specifically for the iPad. Now let's run through the ports so you can see what's so good about it. On the bottom here, we have an HDMI port. This can deliver 4K at 30 Hertz and 1080p at 60 Hertz. Going back to the top, we have a USB-C port for pass-through power. This charges the hub itself, so you can then run external USB devices off that. More on that in a second. We have two SD, micro and full slots there for photographs and media ingest. Great for photographers, great for videographers. A full USB 3.1 port, power, data, the works. This is a 5 gigabits per second port, so you really can use this for hard drives and other high power USB devices. And then we've just got a microphone, a headphone jack on the side here as well, so you can plug your headphones in. The best thing about this device, aside from the form factor, is that it clips onto the iPad at the side here. Now, be warned, this was designed with the Apple folio case in mind. So it can be an awkward fit. I'm just going to jimmy it onto the Logitech case here, but it does work and it is great. It does come with a little USB-C extension cable in the box, so you can, if you have an unwieldy case like this, you can use the cable instead, or you can use then the hub with your MacBook or other laptop. If you're very smart, you will not throw that cable away. I unfortunately did, so I can't demonstrate it. But great device, really helpful, and the fact that it clips onto the device on the side like this means if you're working on the plane or the train or something like that, like I do, you just know it's secure and it's safe and it's not going to fall out. Item number 7 for your iPad Pro setup is a mouse. Since iPad OS, it's been possible to drive your iPad using a standard Bluetooth mouse. I'm using this, the Logitech MX Anywhere 2S mouse. I won't dive into that on this video. I have a full guide to that mouse here, so please check that out. Let's dive straight into item number 8. Item number 8 on the iPad Pro kit list is some kind of external drive. Now, I have 2 drives that I use, one which I carry all the time and one which I only take when I'm doing more serious work. So the one I carry with me all the time is this little guy. It's a SanDisk thumb drive. Now, why I like this one in particular is that it has USB-C on one side and it has USB on the other side. This means that for file transfer, for shuffling files between devices, it's really good. I don't have to have any fancy adapters. It's only 64 gigabytes, which for backing up files and for doing file transfer, for me at least, is totally fine. And it was only £18. So given its size and price, get one and chuck it in your bag and you've got it if you need it. Now, for more serious work, I carry this with me, which is the My Passport Wireless Pro from Western Digital. This is the 4TB version. It's an awesome drive, but it was expensive. I think it retails for £200 right now. And the 3TB and 2TB ones are only like £20 cheaper, which frankly is a total rip-off. Why I like this drive so much, firstly, it has an SD slot on the side here. You can just chuck your SD card in that slot and the drive will automatically download all the information and back it up to the drive. And it's smart sync as well, so if you haven't formatted the drive since you last used it, it only copies across new files, which is brilliant. Second reason why I like this drive is it has 2 interface modes. So you can access it as a Wi-Fi drive using the Western Digital app on the iPad or the iPhone, which is great if you want to share files between multiple devices at the same time. It works really, really well. But if you want faster, more serious download speed to your iPad, then it has a USB 3.1 interface and you can get 5 gigabits per second download using the USB-C hub from earlier. If there's any gear that you think is critical that you think I've missed off this list, then please put a comment down below. Love to hear from you. Always on the lookout for new gear to add to my setup and new gear to review. As always, I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please hit like, please hit subscribe. And don't just hit subscribe, but hit the bell so you don't miss out on new content, and in particular, so you don't miss out on part 2 of this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.